Okay, preparing to live stream. Okay, do this now. I think we are on. Okay, I think we're on. Hopefully we are. Okay, so we're going to do Chanukah today. We'll start with the bracha on the Torah, and then we'll go into Chanukah. Okay, Baruch, you can say it together with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al divrei Torah. And then Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai Noten HaTorah. Okay, wonderful. So, hope everyone is enjoying their Chanukah. It was nice to see whoever came on Sunday. Hi, Lynn. Good morning. Okay, there we go. So, Chanukah. If you would like jot down things about Chanukah, what comes to mind? What are things that comes to your mind when you say the word Chanukah? Next, right, for sure. Food is first. What else? Family. Dreidel.
Menorah.
Not by might, not by power, but by spirit.
Oh, okay.
Very, very
Very nice. Okay. Very good. Very good.
Chani, can you repeat what other people there say?
Yes, I'm sorry. So Dr. Jojo said, not by might, not by power, but by the spirit of Hashem, or by the candles, by the flames, by the fire. Very nice. Very good. So lots of you mentioned, what came to mind first was a lot of the symbols, dreidel, menorah, candles, but what is the celebration of Chanukah really about? What is like the innermost lesson? What are we celebrating? What's the main thing that we're celebrating? Sorry. Just gonna tell her to text. Sorry.
You're talking about the oil or the historical defeat?
Okay, the historical defeat and the Maccabees, right? And right. The what's the actual, what happened during Chanukah time that created this whole holiday of Chanukah? So we just backtrack for a moment and we go back in history a little bit. So the story of Chanukah The story of Chanukah took place during the time of the Second Temple, okay, more than 2,000 years ago, when the Jewish people had been living, in the land of Israel. And the highlight, of course, of Jewish life was the temple, was the Beis Hamikdash. And it was a glorious structure with tremendous, huge rooms and courtyards. And we know that the high priest, every morning, he would go and light the 7-branch menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, right? And then later on in the year 222 BCE, Antiochus III came and he waged war against King Ptolemy of Egypt. And they were fighting over the possession of the Holy Land of Israel. And Antiochus, he was victorious, and the land of Israel was annexed to his empire, right? Now, at the beginning of his reign, he acted very favorably towards the Jews. The Jews lived in peace with the Greeks and the Syrians. Everything was very peaceful. And the Jews and the Syrians were watching how the Jews lived, and they were actually very interested in the ways of the Jews. The Greeks were very educated. They were a very educated nation. They were into studying philosophy, and they were also very into, we know, like culture and not just that, like the way they looked, like being healthy and being fit. They had the gymnasiums and all that, right? And also of the arts. And they noticed the strict set of values that the Jews had. And they were very impressed. They saw how they studied, they were very intellectual, and they saw how they kept their values, right? Jews have very good values, and it made sense. Everything made sense. The Jews circumcised themselves, for health reasons, it makes sense. They light the Shabbos candles, it's romantic to sit by candles, to have Shabbos, a day of rest. So they saw that it was a very normal, everything made sense, their way of life. But then there was one thing that didn't make sense to the Greeks. They realized that there were some things that the Jews were doing that was not logical, and that they were only doing these things because God said so. They were beyond rational. And they realized that some of the things that they were doing wasn't because of what they thought was the reason. Like when they thought that Jews lit Shabbos candles because it was a romantic thing to do, then they realized, no, they lit Shabbos candles because it was Shabbos, and there's a mitzvah in the Torah. Hashem commanded them to light the Shabbos candles in order to bring peace in the home, because in those days there was no electricity. Why do we light Shabbos candles? Because there was no electricity, and we want to keep the peace in the home. We don't want anyone stumbling and falling, and we want Shabbos to be a peaceful day, a peaceful night. And so that's why we light Shabbos candles, or whatever else, any other mitzvah. They started to realize, it's not really based just on logic and that it makes sense. It's more to do because Hashem said so. And so they didn't like that. That's when they started, they saw they didn't like that. Because you do it because of Hashem, what is this? Throughout the history of the Jewish people, there's been two kinds of enemies. Two different types of enemies that have risen up against the Jews. There were those who were interested in our physical annihilation, and there were those that were interested in our spiritual annihilation. For example, Hitler, Yimach Shemai, he was the classic example of a physical annihilation. He didn't care about Torah, anything. He just wanted to get rid of the Jews. Haman, in the story of Purim, he also just wanted to destroy, totally eradicate the Jewish nation. He didn't care about Torah, mitzvahs, keeping the Torah, nothing. That was physical annihilation. What's an example of enemies for spiritual annihilation? The Crusades, the Spanish Inquisition, right? They just wanted the Jews to convert. They said, stay alive. We want you to stay alive, but just convert. Just do what we want you to do. That's a spiritual annihilation of the Jewish people. And this, the story of Chanukah, is the same thing with Antiochus, with the Greek army. This was the aspiration of the Greeks. They said, Jews, stay alive. We don't want to kill you physically. We just want you to give up your Yiddishkeit. What did they do? They said, keep your Torah. We want you to study your Torah. It's such a wonderful book. It's got so much knowledge and history, and it's beautiful to study a book, but study it as a subject. Don't study it because it's God's Torah. Don't study it as if it's God's commandments and values. Just study because it's a nice book. And we say, there's a special prayer that we say every day of Chanukah, throughout the 8 days of Chanukah. There's a special prayer that we add in our prayers every day, and when we do the grace after meals, when we bench after having bread. It's called Al Hanisim. It talks about the miracles that happened, and it talks about the high priest living at that time. His name was Matisyahu. He was the Kohen Gadol. He was the high priest. And it says there in that prayer, it says, what did the Greeks want us to do? It says, Lehashkicham Torasecha. They tried to make the Jews to forget. Lahashkicham is to forget Toratecha, your Torah. And to take the Jews away from mitzvotecha, from your commandments, your meaning Hashem. They wanted to remove the Jews from learning your commandments, your Torah, Hashem. They said, as I said before, no, you want to learn? Very good. But don't learn it because it's Hashem's Torah. They wanted to take away that godly, that spiritual aspect of them. And where do we see this in the whole war of Chanukah? We see this idea that they wanted to contaminate the learning of Torah with the Greek culture. They wanted to bring in the Greek culture into the Jewish people. We see that when the Greek army, when they came in, number one, actually, they did not destroy the temple. The Greeks, the Romans and Babylonians did. The Babylonians destroyed the first temple, but now we're talking about the second temple. The Greeks did not destroy the temple. What did they do? They entered into the temple and they brought idols into the temple. They brought a pig onto the altar. They just defiled it. They wanted to bring their Greek culture into our most sacred, holy place. That's what they wanted to do. They didn't destroy it. They just said, oh, we want to enter into your most holiest sanctuary and bring our ideas into it. So they brought their idols into the temple. And then what did they do with the oil? They could have spilled out when they found all the oil that the holy priest, the high priest, used to light the menorah every single day. They could have spilled out every single jar of oil that they found, but no, they didn't spill it out. What did they do? They just tampered with it. They opened up the seal. There was a special seal of the high priest that sealed every single jug of olive oil. And that was only if it had the seal could the high priest use it. They just tampered with it. They just sealed it and they put it back into place. They put the jar of oil right next to the menorah and they said, here's oil. You could still light the menorah. Here. They didn't even spill it out. They just opened the seal again to show they just wanted to put their Greek culture into it, to take away that holiness from whatever the Jews were doing. That was their intention. So they wanted to Hellenize Yiddishkeit. They wanted to Hellenize Judaism from the inside. They wanted the Jews to continue to have a Beit HaMikdash. They wanted them to continue to light the menorah, to continue to study Torah, but without the holiness. They wanted to make Yiddishkeit into a culture that had no soul, that had no deeper meaning or feeling in it. And then, and so we know the story that the Jews stood up for themselves, and we know that a tiny army, a few thousand Jews who were called the Maccabees, and they were headed, this army was headed by Matisyahu, who was the Kohen Gadol, and his 5 sons, one of his sons being Judah the Maccabee, Yehuda HaMaccabee. And we know that this tiny army defeated the huge Greek Syrian army. Same. Yeah. Yeah, same thing. So here we understand a little more what was going on at the time of Chanukah, that it wasn't just a physical war, it was a spiritual war. And once we understand this, then we can understand there's 2 questions that we can ask about the holiday of Chanukah. Number one, usually every single holiday, if you think about it, Jewish holiday is celebrated with a festive meal, right? Purim has a meal. Pesach has a meal. Rosh Hashanah has a meal. Sukkot has a meal. Even before Yom Kippur, it's a mitzvah to eat before Yom Kippur. Just as it's a mitzvah to fast on Yom Kippur, it's a mitzvah to eat before Yom Kippur. Every single Jewish holiday, we celebrate with a meal and family, friends get together. Chanukah, we don't. Think about it, right? There's no commandment to sit down with a meal or custom, if you want to say, yeah, we have dreidel, we have donuts and latkes, but it's not like an official meal. So why not? Why don't we do that on Chanukah? And another question we can ask about the holiday of Chanukah is that we find that the main focus of the holiday of Chanukah is the lighting of the menorah, right? That's the main thing. But what about the miraculous victory of the small army defeating the large army, right? We just mentioned that fact in our prayers, in the special prayer that I mentioned, this Al Hanissim prayer that we add during the 8 days. We mentioned about the fact that the small army defeated the larger army, but why isn't it commemorated in a more prominent way? We find that the main focus of Hanukkah is lighting the menorah, the miracle of the oil lasting for 8 days, right? So what is the reason? So as we explained, right, the whole idea of the 2 types of enemies, and the one enemy being a physical, wanting to annihilate the Jews in a physical way, and another enemy wanting to annihilate the Jews in a spiritual way. So once we understand that idea, then now we're going to understand why we celebrate Chanukah without a meal, and why we focus on the lights. So because Hanukkah is more of a spiritual celebration, as we said, they wanted to kill us spiritually. They wanted to take away our souls. They wanted to take away our neshamas, Hashem, from whatever we're doing. That's why we celebrate with kindling of candles, with fire, with something more spiritual. And we're going to talk about what fire is, rather than with food. Even though, yes, there was a war and everything, we don't celebrate that victory as much because that's secondary. That's more secondary to the main miracle of finding that pure olive oil. Because when we celebrate with light, what's the idea of light, of fire? Okay. Our sages explain that everything in this world has 4 elements to it. There's earth, water, fire, and air, right? Now, each of these elements, fire is different from all these other elements. All the other elements are more physical. They all have dimension. They all follow certain laws of physics. They have limitations in time and space, like water, earth. It's limited. There's a certain amount of water in the world. There's a certain amount of earth in the world, right? But with fire, there's no limitations. You can take one tiny flame, and from that tiny flame, you can light 1 billion other candles. You're not limited with fire, right? From one tiny candle, you can light so many more. And the original candle doesn't diminish in any way, right? So from where does all that fire come from? That's just the difference. That's the way Hashem made it, that it has unlimited amount of fire. And also another difference between fire and the other elements is that fire always seeks to go up. If you hold a candle upside down, the flame always seeks to go up, right? And that is because it's always looking to go to its source above, always trying to reach its source above. And that's why the Jewish souls and the neshama is compared to a fire, a flame. It says, Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The candle of Hashem is the soul of a man. Because just like a flame always strives, no matter which direction you put it, you hold it up, you hold it down, it's always trying to reach upwards. So to our souls, no matter what situation we're in, our souls are always striving to connect with its source above, with Hashem. And talking about lighting candles, there are 3 types of candles that we light as a mitzvah. We have Chanukah throughout the year. We have Chanukah candles. What other candles do we have? We have Shabbat candles and Yom Tov candles. And right, so we have the Yom Tov and Shabbos. We have candles of the menorah, and we have the candles of the Beit HaMikdash.
And Havdalah.
Havdalah candles. Okay, that's a good one. You're right.
Somebody say you outside already?
Candles, right. Dale just mentioned that, your side candles. So we're going to focus on the difference of, well, all the other candles, the Shabbos candles, the Yom Tov candles, Havdalah candles, Yartzeit candles, all that. What's the difference between those type of candles and the Chanukah candles? And the candles that were lit in the temple? What's the difference between them? The way that they're lit, their function and everything. So number 1.
Didn't have you so quiet.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry.
Okay. Number 1 is that the menorah in the temple, in the Beit HaMikdash, was lit indoors. When the high priest lit it, it was indoors, and that the light and it was mainly to light up the Beit HaMikdash, to light up the temple. Where do we light our Chanukah candles? Specifically, that they should shine through a window. It should be at the entrance of a home or through the window, that the light should shine out. We shouldn't just keep the light inwards, right? That's the difference. And also our Shabbos candles or our holiday, or our Yom Tov candles, we light them indoors. It's to light up the home. Chanukah is a different story. We have the mitzvah of Pirsumei Nisa, to publicize the miracle of Chanukah. And that is why we light the candles towards the outside, so we can publicize the light. Everybody should see the lights of Chanukah. Another difference is that with Shabbos and holiday candles and Yom Tov candles, we always light the same amount of candles. But with Chanukah, we're always adding. Each night, we add one. That's the difference. Because Chanukah is here to teach us that whatever was good enough yesterday is not good enough for today. We always have to increase. in our connection with Hashem, in our Torah observance, in our mitzvot, or us as a person and growing as a person, each day we have to always increase in what we do.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And why do some people start with 8 candles and then,
They decrease, yeah?
yeah.
Some people do that.
There was, I think it was, there's two rabbis, one wanted to-
Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel, right. In the Talmud, right, there's a discussion between the two rabbis, Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel. There's a discussion about how do we light the candles. One rabbi says we start with 8, and then we go down. Each day we take out we take out one, and then the other rabbi says no, we start with 1 and add 2. We go according to the one that says that you start with 1. Everybody does it. That's the way it is. That's the Talmud. They have discussions, and then we come to one final decision, and we follow that final decision. So everybody does 1 and then adds in 1 every single night. And then also the difference is that by Shabbos and Yom Tov, we light specifically before it gets dark. You have to light your Shabbos candles before it gets dark. Once it's dark, it's already Shabbos. You can't light your Shabbos candles. With Chanukah, we wait till it gets dark, and we only light the candles when it gets dark. So that's another difference, right? And this teaches us that we should not let the darkness intimidate us. We shouldn't say, oh, it's so dark outside. What can I do? You know, I'm such a little person. What can I do? How can my little candle light up the outside, the darkness? But Chanukah teaches us that we shouldn't feel helpless, that we can do something to illuminate the darkness. Each one of us, whether it's a personal darkness or a global darkness, that we have to know that Hashem gives us the opportunity and the capability and the strength to light up whatever spiritual darkness we're in. And especially now during this time when we see for Jews around the world, when we see so much anti-Semitism going around, we should not be afraid to stand up for who we are. And yes, little me, each person should stand up and be a candle in the dark. That's the idea of Chanukah. Now, actually, during Chanukah, there's a women also play a very vital role in the story of Chanukah. Have any of you heard the story of Yehudit with the Greek general? Do you remember the story? I once said it. Do you remember it? Any of you are familiar with the name Yehudit? You've heard of girls with the name Yehudit. I don't know the English name, Judith, or, you know, yeah. Beautiful story of a woman hero during the Greek rule, while the Greeks were ruling the Jewish nation. So there was a very a holy, a refined woman called Yehudit. She was the daughter of Matisyahu, the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. And she lived in the town of Betulia, in the land of Judea. And at that time, the Jewish people were under rule by a mighty Syrian Greek general whose name was Holofernes. This Greek general, Holofernes, and he was notorious for his cruelty, for his strong hand against the Jews. And when whenever he captured cities, whoever tried to rebel against him, he did not show any mercy to them, not women, not children, not to anyone. So like whoever came under his rule, they had to follow him. No one dared to rebel against him. And so what had happened was that now he wanted to crush the town of Betulia, where this Jewish nation was living. And of course, they were very scared to do so. And they were scared to do so, but they tried. The Jewish people stood up and they tried to fight against him. And Holofernes, seeing that he couldn't take the fortified town by force, because they did stand up against him, what did he do to try to take over Betulia? He decided to starve the inhabitants into submission. He cut off all their food supply, all their water supply, and before long, the town was ready to surrender. And hungry and thirsty, they gathered in the marketplace, and they came to their leader at that time, whose name was Uzziah. And they said to him, listen, we're going to surrender. We can't handle this anymore. And Uzziah, like they didn't want to give in to this mighty Halifornis. And they said, just give us 5 days. Let's see what we can do. Give us 5 days before you wanted to surrender. Give us a chance. Let's see what we can do. Out from the crowd comes this woman, and she walks up to Uzziah and the leaders, and she says to them in a very clear and firm voice, she says, why do you test God, giving him only 5 days in which to send us help? This woman, Yehudis, she was a widow. She had lost her husband, Menashe, several years before, and she had devoted all her acts since that time to study, to Torah prayer, to charity, and to prayer and to helping others. And she was a very charming, graceful, beautiful woman. And when she stood there and spoke those words with such a firm voice, it made a deep impression on the leaders, on Uzziah and the other leaders. And they said to her, you're right, but what could we do? Because we don't have anything to do. We have to wait. Maybe only if Hashem sends rain to fill our empty cisterns, maybe that will bring some food or whatever, like to water the grain or whatever. But otherwise, it's just prayer. What should we do? So Yehudis answers, yes, we should pray, but I have thought of a plan as well. And if you give me permission, I'm going to go out of the town with my maidservant, and I want to go to Halifornis, this Greek Syrian general myself. So they were shocked, but okay, you want to try it? It was their last resort, go. So she goes with she takes her maidservant, she passes through the gates of Betulia, she wears her best clothes, and she has a veil that's covering her face. And she goes with her maid and a basket filled with rolls and cheese and several bottles of wine. She comes with her maid towards the enemy's camp, and she's whispering silent prayers. And they were stopped, of course, by the guards, and they wanted to know who are they, who sent them. And they said, we have a very important message for your general, for your commander, Halifornis. Take us to him at once. And they said, who are you? And she said, I'm a plain widow from Betulia. I came to tell you how to capture the town in the hope that you will deal mercifully with the inhabitants. I've come to share some secrets of how to capture the town. And they let her in, she comes to Halifornis, and she tells Halifornis how it's become so unbearable in the town, and that she says that she sees how mighty Halifornis is, and she wants to tell him, she was going to tell him when the inhabitants of Betulia, when they would get so down and out, and when they would come to a point of starvation that they can't handle it anymore, she would be the one to let Halifornis know, so that at that time he could come in with his army and just conquer the entire town. So he was very happy. He was very happy with that idea. And he said, okay, but how are you going to let me know? How are you going to come in and that? So she answered very confidently. She said, I've arranged with the watchman at the city's gates that I would come to you every evening to exchange information. I will tell them what's doing there. I'll also talk to the watchman. I'll tell them what's doing in the town of Betulia. They'll tell me what's going on over here. I'll be like your confidant, every evening I'll be coming back and forth. So he was so captivated by this strong woman. He loved what he was hearing, that she was literally giving him the key to the city. And he said, okay, if you're really telling me the truth and you're going to help me capture the city, you will be my wife. And he gave orders that this Yehudis and the maid should be allowed to walk freely amongst the Greek campsite, and anyone attempting to molest them will be put to death immediately. And so they were given full free entry to the campsite. And so Yehudis and her maidservant, they could always be seen walking leisurely throughout the camp, throughout the day and evening time. And so after a while, they attracted little attention, right? People didn't even ask them questions who they were. So Yehudis comes back to the Uzziah and she says, listen, tell the people that things are shaping up according to plan, and with Hashem's help, we shall prevail over our enemy. Keep your strong trust in Hashem. Do not lose hope for a moment. And then the following evening, again, she comes with her maidservant She has her basket filled with food, and she comes to the city's gates, and she comes to Halifornis. And Halifornis, during this time, he wasn't doing much during the day. He's just sitting there waiting to capture the city. And he sees Yehudis, and he's like, welcome, what did you bring me today? What news do you have? And she says, I have very good news for you, General. There is not a scrap of kosher food left in the city now. In a day or two, the Jewish people are going to land up eating their animals, their cats, their dogs, their mules. And if they do that, Hashem's not going to be too happy, and Hashem's going to deliver them into your hands. Wonderful, he says. This calls for a celebration. Tonight, we're going to have a party. You and I are going to have a party together, and you're going to be on the guest. We're going to celebrate. And Yehudis like, very happy, thank you. That evening, Yehudis comes to his tent, and it was laden with lots of delicacies, and he welcomes her, and he asks her to eat. But Yehudis says, you know what? I brought my own kosher food, and I brought my own cheese, my own wine. I have the most amazing goat cheese, she tells him. I prepared it. I'm sure you're going to like it, General. And she feeds it to him. She gives him the cheese, and she also feeds him this undiluted wine that she had brought with him. And before long, after just like feeding him tons of cheese and wine, he is sprawled out on the ground, and he is dead drunk. So Yehudis now, this is her opportunity. She props a pillow under his head, rolls him over to his face, and she utters a silent prayer to Hashem that, just as you answered, she says, just as you answered, there was another Jewish lady, a heroine called Yael, who also delivered the Jewish people from a general, Sisera. She had also done the same brave acts. And she said, just like Hashem, you helped Yael, strengthen me, help me, that we can bring deliverance to your people. So Yehudis takes the sword from the general's sheath, and she takes it at his neck, and she brings down the sword at his neck. She composes herself afterwards, then she wraps the head of the general in rags. She conceals it under her shawl, and she and her maidservant walk calmly out of the tent. They walk outside quickly as if nothing happened, and they take this prize that they have, and they go straight to Uzziah, the Jewish leader. He could not believe his eyes when he sees this Jewish prize that she had brought him. And she says to Uzziah, listen, there's no time to lose. Prepare our men for a surprise attack, because as soon as the enemy walks into this general's tent and they see what meets their eyes, they are going to either attack us or they're going to flee. They're just going to be so shocked. They're not going to know what to do without their general, or they're just going to flee. But just be prepared in case of an attack. And that's exactly what happened. The enemy walked into the tent. They saw their headless general, and they fled in terror and confusion, leaving the body there. And thank God it was a wonderful victory. And this brave daughter, thanks to the brave daughter, Yehudis, the daughter of Yochanan, the high priest, he was the father of the Hashmonaim family, that she saved the Jewish people at that time. So we see the strength of the Jewish woman, not only during that time, but throughout history also. We know during the time in Egypt, it was the women. They say in the merit of the Jewish woman, the Jews were freed from Egypt, because the Jewish women are endowed with a greater level of faith in Hashem than men. The men need more help in their faith, but we have a greater faith. And the women knew that we were going to go out of Egypt. They prepared tambourines, and they prepared musical instruments to take with them, because they said, one day we're going to get out of here. So it's all through Jewish history that women have saved the Jewish people. And the same strength that Hashem gave to save the Jewish people, that's the strength that we have to bring also this idea of we are the foundation of the home, that we are the ones who bring the Yiddishkeit into our home. We are responsible for the Jewish atmosphere in the home, for the mitzvos in our home, to bring a happy, joyous love of Hashem into our home. That is a strength that us women also have. I would like to share two stories to end off with. One story is about, I actually shared this on Shabbos as well, so those of you who were here heard it, but the idea of Chanukah, there's so many beautiful lessons of Chanukah, but as we learned today, the main thing is that it was a spiritual fight. They try to kill our neshamas, our souls, to take away the godliness the godly spark from us. And that's the main message of Hanukkah. It's more of a spiritual holiday with light and fire. And that the main message is that we have one single candle in the dark can illuminate the whole room. We have to remember that the power that we have. And from the story that I'm going to share with you, we see that it's actually a story that's got to do with Henya Bas Bracha Devar Leah, who this class is dedicated to, the shlucha of the Rebbe, who's not well. She's fighting for her life still. She's still fighting for her life. She was transported to New Jersey, to a different hospital. And please God, we'll see a miracle. Just like on Hanukkah, we had great miracles. We're going to see a miracle that Hashem is going to send Henya Bas Bracha Devar Leah a complete refuah shlema. So this story happened with her, with her place where she lives, Hanukkah time. So they live in St. Thomas, the Virgin Islands, and her and her husband are the Chabad rabbi in Rebbetzin, and they service all the tourists, the hundreds, thousands of tourists that come there, right? Especially during this time of the year, especially during the holiday time. They have tons of cruise ships coming. And at the docks, they have yeshiva boys standing there with Hanukkah menorah kits, just like we have here, giving out menorah kits and dreidels and everything for all the Jewish people on the ship. And so, I think it was 16 years ago, that there was a Jewish family who came to St. Thomas, and they were gifted with a menorah. And this Jewish family had a little boy and a little girl, parents and a little boy and a little girl. They come back onto the ship, and it's dinner time. And the boy turns to his father. This boy's name was Beryl Solomon. Last name is Solomon. And he turns to his father and he says, "Hey, Dad, tonight is Chanukah. Why don't we take out the menorah that we got today from the yeshiva boys and light the menorah over here at our dinner table?" And the father was the parents weren't so observant. They were a bit hesitant, to do it like they were the only Jews there. Come on, they're going to be the only ones lighting the menorah. But the son insisted, and he's like, "Okay, go up to the room, go get it." Brings on the menorah. They light the menorah at their dinner table. And then a few minutes later, we see another family take out their menorah and light theirs too. And then another family take out theirs. And it continued until 70 tables in that dining room had menorahs lit. They all received menorahs from the yeshiva boys. And the story doesn't end there. They were so inspired by that sight of 70 menorahs in the dining room, when they thought they were the only Jewish family. And because of that Jewish child who had the guts to say, "Let's light it here, even if we're the only ones." So when they came back, they lived in Montreal. When they came back to Montreal, the family joined their local synagogue, and they came to classes, and the son went to Hebrew school, and slowly but surely they started to observe more. And this Beryl Solomon landed up going to a yeshiva, Chabad yeshiva in Jerusalem. It's called Mayonot. And he brought his friends there with him, and he studied there. And then he was telling his teacher, the rabbi he was studying with in Mayonot, the story about how he became religious, from that one candle, but that menorah lighting. And his rabbi said that, "I think that I was one of those yeshiva boys standing at the docks giving out the menorahs that night." So you never know. This is the message of Hanukkah. You never know one tiny candle, the effect that it could make. And just incidentally, one story that happened with us, with our deliveries, we gave over 200 Hanukkah bags here in Palmetto Bay, thanks to all the volunteers and everyone's help. And so there's a gentleman living in Palmetto Bay, and he posted the story up on his Facebook page. And he wrote that 2 nights ago, the first night of Hanukkah, him and his wife were just getting over the flu, and they were not feeling well, and they realized it was the first night of Hanukkah, but all they had was a menorah. They did not have candles, and they were just too tired. They didn't have the strength to go out and buy candles. And so they said, "You know what? We're not going to light menorah tonight, tomorrow." But he said he felt sad. He really felt sad not to light the menorah that first night. And then there was a knock at his door, and somebody from Chabad of Palmetto Bay handed him a gift bag with the menorah and candles. He said that was his Hanukkah miracle, that he was able to light candles because of Chabad of Palmetto Bay's gift. So you never know that one by one, each neshama that we touch, each neshama that we kindle, it's tremendous. And we never know the effect. Like I wouldn't have known that story. Okay, you posted it nowadays, social media, but we never know. Maybe it happened to somebody else. You know, you never know the effects of what you do. And the next story, I'm actually going to share it because the rabbi who tells the story, his name's Rabbi Jacobson, he tells it really well. And so we're going to share it. We're going to watch it here. It's like a 8-9 minute story, but it's worth it. It's also the message of Hanukkah, how one single light can save a Jewish life. Okay, so I'm going to move I'm going to actually just turn the computer around. I'm going to share the screen first.
It's on Facebook.
What, the story?
What you're gonna do now?
Yes, it is. Okay, so 1 second. I'm just going to. I don't want to delete this. Okay, let me get back to Zoom. Okay, so share screen. Here we go. Okay.
One day back in 1995, a father and his 8-year-old daughter moved right next door to my friend, Rabbi Moshe Brisky, the Chabad ambassador to Agoura Hills, California. On the very same day that they moved into their new home, Rabbi Brisky welcomed them to the neighborhood, and he invited the father and daughter, Jack and Sarah, to join the Brisky family for a Shabbos festive meal. Now, Jack was a former conductor of the choir at a Reformed temple in California. So the songs sung around the Shabbos table were very familiar to him. And the two, Jack and Rabbi Brisky, befriended each other. His new neighbor began attending some of the community programs and classes and lectures. One evening, the rabbi gave a class entitled Faith and Suffering. And when he concluded the lecture, Jack broke down sobbing. It was then that Rabbi Brisky invited him into his office. They sat down, and Jack shared with him his personal story. A year before I moved to Agoura Hills, Jack tells Rabbi Brisky, my wife and I were married with 3 little beautiful children. We made a good living. We were happy. Life was blissful. But 2 of my little children were in a car accident, and they were both killed. Following the tragedy, I just fell apart. I descended into the abyss. I became depressed. Therapist after therapist, nobody can help me. I could not go back to work. I lost my job. I simply could not function. My marriage could not stand up to the profound grief, and a divorce soon followed. My wife took my 3rd and only surviving daughter, Sarah, and she left the house. I was now a complete mess, alone in the world, no hope, no family, no anchor. Life became darker each day. The sun never came out for me. The pain was incessant and overwhelming. I decided to put an end to my misery, to end my life. I wanted to bid farewell to my daughter on a positive note. So I called my ex-wife and I asked her, can I take out Sarah to the movies? She said, yeah, go ahead. I did not tell her about my plans. We made our way to the Mountain Gate Plaza Cinema in the Simi Valley Mall. My plan was that we would watch a child-friendly film together. I would bring her back home to her mother, and then I'd say goodbye to this dark and scary world. As we enter the mall, we hear some music playing. It was strange. As I listen, I can hear it's Jewish music, even stranger. And then I was shocked to see some Jewish men singing and dancing right in front of the movie theater. It was a bizarre scene. There was a menorah burning brightly in the background, and suddenly I remembered it's Hanukkah. Before I knew it, One of the Jewish fellows, a guy wearing a kippah, yarmulke, and a beard and sidelocks payas, he drew us into the circle, and there I was dancing with these Jewish guys. The night I had planned to end my life, I found myself dancing and celebrating. It was surreal. But something happened during that dance. As I watched the Chanukah flames burning, and these yeshiva boys dancing with so much love and passion and enthusiasm, a mysterious sense of hope was ignited in my heart. A feeling of joy was kindled in the depth of my soul. A flicker of positivity showed up inside of me. I closed my eyes, and for the first time since the horrific accident, I can feel a glimmer of serenity. I decided to give life a second chance. I would move, find a new home, and begin a new life. So I found this house in Agura Hills, and I prayed to God that it would be the right place and everything would work out. And there, on the very day I moved with my daughter, you were standing outside inviting me for a Shabbos meal. Rabbi Moshe Brisky listened to the story. He wiped away a tear. And then he turned to the shelf in his office and he reached for a photo album of Chanukah celebrations organized by Chabad of Agura Hills over the years. He opened it. He flipped through the pages and then he retrieved one photo entitled Chanukah at the Simi Valley Mall. He pointed to the photo and he said to Jack, here you are in the photo. Here I am. I was actually the person who pulled you into the circle that night. As they both wept emotionally, Rabbi Brisky said to Jack, I remember that night very well. And I'll tell you why. You see, each year at Chabad, we choose another mall. We're to put up our candelabra and make a Chanukah celebration, inviting Jews of all backgrounds and affiliations to be part of the Festival of Lights. And that year, we chose Simi Valley Mall. So I phoned the mall. They put us through to the Mountain Gate Plaza Cinema. The woman who answered the phone says, hi, how can I help you? And I say, we would love to light the menorah outside the mall. And she says, you're sure? And I say, yes. She says, you're sure? And I say, absolutely. She says, no problem. If that's what you want, you got it. She granted us permission. So we prepared, we booked the music band, we brought donuts, we prepared a large menorah, we even had a clown, hot latkes, dreidlach, the works. As we arrived on the first night of Chanukah, me and the yeshiva boys helping me, I realized my mistake. The mall was going out of business. I didn't know that. All the stores had been closed down already because the whole place was being demolished. The only thing that was left open was the movie theater. That's why the woman kept on asking me if I'm sure that I want to put up a Chanukah menorah there. So as we arrived, we discovered the place was deserted. We had everything, but there were no people. I felt like such an idiot. Like such a schlemazel. But we were there already. What are we supposed to do? There was nowhere else to go. It was Hanukkah. So we took our menorah, we set it up in front of the movie theater, and any poor person trying to go into the movies was schlepped into our Hanukkah dance so we wouldn't feel that we are just complete fools. I came home that night ashamed, disappointed, frustrated. I tell my wife, what a failure. What a disaster of a night. It bombed. Or so I thought. As it turns out, that small, soulful dance in front of the movie theater, Mountain Gate Plaza in Simi Valley, saved Jack's life. Sarah did not lose her father that night. Jack rebuilt his life. Today, Sarah is married and recently had twins. Jack called Rabbi Brisky from the delivery room and he said, God gave me back my two lost angels. Rabbi Brisky forwarded me the text message that Jack sent him for Chanukah. I quote parts of it. From the moment Sarah and I walked into the foyer of that shopping center, you were an agent of God to raise us up and enrich our lives, and you continue to do it now. It occurred to me that had it not been for you that Chanukah night 27 years ago, our worlds would have been entirely different, terrifyingly different. I owe you a debt that I could never repay other than telling you that you are surely one of my life's greatest friends. I love you like a brother, and you are one of God's most holy blessings to me, my family, and the world. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Love, Jack. There are no ordinary days or monotonous nights in God's master plan. There are no real failures in the ultimate story of life. Wherever you are, muster the courage to kindle a flame of love and joy, and the miracles will follow. Happy Chanukah.
Okay. So quite an incredible story. So that's the message of Hanukkah, right? I'm just gonna